I'd been planning the wedding of my dreams from even before I met my fiancé George. When he finally proposed, it was easy. I just pulled out my wedding planner and started making calls to book everything. Luckily for us, George's sister Anna worked at a wedding venue right on the beach, so she helped us to organize that. In fact, she pretty much helped us organize everything. It was like the ideal scenario. A wedding planner in the family. She was even more organized than me. Everything was going to plan. But then, 2 weeks before our big day, we got a phone call. It was Anna. She was crying so much, I could barely understand her. She said there had been a mistake and the venue had been double booked. I started panicking and told her she would just have to tell the other couple we'd booked first. But she said that was impossible because the other couple had paid at least 6 months before us and that her ex-colleague had obviously made a big mistake. I was devastated, but George said we'd just find somewhere else. Was he crazy? I wasn't getting married anywhere else. This had been my dream venue ever since I was a child. The next day, George and I sat down and decided to just get married in my parents' garden. We called all our guests to explain what had happened and to give them the new venue details. Anna was so surprised and kept saying we should reschedule for a few months later and still get married at her venue. In fact, she seemed kind of offended that we'd chosen somewhere else. I wanted to shout at her. "This is your fault!" George said at least we'd still go on our honeymoon. I went upstairs to think about packing. Anything to take my mind off of what had happened. I pulled my suitcase out and then went to look at our honeymoon folder where I kept our passports and tickets. But our passports weren't there. I had a quick look around the room, but they were nowhere to be seen. I shouted to George, and he came to help me look. And he even looked worried. I never lost anything. This was so strange. First, our venue was double booked. Now our passports were missing. If I didn't know better, I'd think we were doomed. What else could go wrong? I spent the next 10 days making all the plans for the new venue. There was so much to organize, and I had to do a lot of it by myself, as George was still working every day. And now Anna was no help at all. She didn't answer any of my calls, and I thought maybe I should send her flowers to apologize for choosing another venue. But she should have been the one sending me flowers. This was so messed up. 2 nights before the wedding, I was with my friends trying out different hairstyles when I got a call from George asking me to come home right away. I drove home so quickly, freaking out about what might have happened. When I walked through the door, George was standing there holding a phone in his hand. He was angry and threw the phone onto the floor. He said he'd been lying on the sofa when he found this phone under the cushion and asked me if there was anything I wanted to explain. I had no idea what he was talking about. I picked it up and realized it was my old phone that I hadn't used in years. I first used it when George and I got together, and he'd bought me a new one 2 years ago. The password was still the same, so I opened it and couldn't believe what I was seeing. A conversation between me and some guy named Seth. I didn't even know a Seth, but there was a photo, and it was of my passport with a caption that said, "They're safe with me. Our plan will work out, baby. We'll be together soon." Then there were messages going back to months before. I felt sick. I told George this wasn't me. Someone had set me up, but he didn't believe me. He said I'd been acting weird recently, and now he knew why. Then he just pushed past me and left. I fell onto the floor and cried, begging him not to leave. But it was too late. I felt like someone had cursed me. How could this be happening? Who would do this to me? I called Anna, and this time she picked up and drove straight over. I told her what had happened, and she seemed shocked and asked if it was true. Was I really cheating on her brother? I was so upset she'd even think that, but she stayed and comforted me anyway. She lay next to me the whole night and told me it would be okay. Then she said something that sent shivers up my spine. She said maybe George had done this because he had cold feet. Who else had access to the phone and would have been able to take our passports? She was right! I couldn't sleep after she said that and tried to call George, but of course he wouldn't pick up. Our wedding was in less than 2 days. and now I need to call the whole thing off. I eventually fell asleep, but a few hours later I woke up. Anna was gone. I went to the bathroom, and on my way back, I could see a light in the spare room. I peeked around the door and couldn't believe what I was seeing. Anna was in there sitting in front of her laptop, clicking through photos. They were all of me! Suddenly, I got a horrid feeling. I ran back to my bed and using my old phone, I texted this Seth guy. I heard a beep straight away, and then I knew. I went marching back through to the spare room, and there was Anna, looking horrified, holding some phone I'd never seen her use before. I'd caught her! She was the one trying to sabotage our wedding! But why? Anna started crying and told me it wasn't what it seemed. Then she told me the truth. She was in love with me, and always had been, and couldn't bear to see me marry her brother! I was so disgusted with her. How could she do this? I mean, it all made sense. Suddenly, I wondered if there was even another couple who'd booked our dream venue. Had she just made it up? I screamed at her to get out and didn't care that it was the middle of the night. Now, I don't know what to do. I love George, but his sister is a complete psycho and in love with me. This is so awkward. I can't believe she made me think George could have planned this. She is crazy. What a horrible situation to be in.